I had been in the house for exactly 4 hours. The boxes were still in the entryway. My coffee maker was the only thing unpacked, because I had decided weeks ago that would be the first thing. I had the closing documents in a folder on the kitchen counter and the deed in a frame I hadn't hung yet. Ty was on my porch when I came to the door, Mom and Dad behind him. The three of them arranged like something that had been discussed and planned before they arrived. Ty said the house was family property. He said it with the confidence of someone stating a fact rather than making a claim. Said family money had helped. Said family connections had made the approval happen. Said the house belonged to all of them, and I needed to understand that before I got too comfortable. Mom nodded. Dad crossed his arms. I stood in my doorway of my house with the deed 30 feet behind me on the kitchen counter. You need to leave my property, I said. My voice was level. The work of keeping it that way was internal and invisible. Ty laughed. Not the warm laugh. The laugh of someone who has always found your boundaries amusing. Prove it, he said. My name is Tessa Callahan. The memory that arrives when I think about my family's relationship with my things is from when I was 9. I had saved money from the birthday cards Grandma June sent every year. 3 years of cards. The money in a shoebox in my closet. I found Ty going through the shoebox on a Saturday afternoon. He said he needed it. He was 12. He had a reason he described quickly and that I barely processed before Mom appeared in the doorway and said I could save more and Ty needed it now, and I was the older one. I gave Ty the money. I was told I was so mature. I was told Ty was going through something. I was told these things as though they were explanations rather than what they actually were. Justifications. This was the beginning of the family language around resources. Everything I had was potentially available for redistribution. Everything Ty had was protected by his need. His need always arrived on time. Mine was usually inconvenient. Back in the present, on my own porch, the porch I owned, Mom held out her hand, palm up. Expectant. Hand us a spare key, she said, like it was obvious, like it required no discussion. Mom's hand stayed extended. She had the expression she used when she was communicating that a thing was already decided and what was happening now was simply the transfer of it from one person to another. The expression that had worked for 33 years because I had always eventually put something into that hand. The shoebox money. The concert ticket at 16. The opportunity at 22 that got redirected toward Ty. My hand stayed at my side. No, I said, softly, completely. The same word in the same quiet register I had been using more recently. The one that kept producing the same result in their faces. Mom blinked. The adjustment was small. The recalibration of someone whose request had not been answered the expected way. Dad stepped up from behind Ty. He said the sentence that functioned as both punishment and prediction in our family. Then you're not welcome at family dinners. I looked at him. I thought about the family dinners, the specific texture of them, who sat where, and who got praised for what, and whose news received the full table, and whose received the polite nod before the conversation moved on. Okay, I said, and closed the door. I slept in my house that first night with boxes stacked against the walls like a city of my own building. The house made sounds. Every house made sounds in its own specific way. These were mine to learn, mine to map. The creak of the hallway floor at a particular point, the settling of the foundation, the radiator's rhythm. But underneath all of it, beneath the sounds that were simply the house being a house, I was listening for something else. Footsteps, knocking. The specific sound of someone trying a door they expected to open. I had given no one a key. The morning came without incident. I got up at 6:30 and drove to the hardware store. I bought new locks. 2 deadbolts and a chain. The locksmith I had called from the car met me at the house by 9. By 10:15, the old locks were gone. The new ones were installed, tested. The keys in my hand and nowhere else. My phone buzzed while I was testing the deadbolt. Ty, a text. Why doesn't my key work? I read the message twice. He had a key to my house. He had gotten one from somewhere, from the previous owners, from some other moment I had not tracked. He had a key, and now he didn't. The family group chat moved fast. It started with a message from an aunt who had heard something somewhere and was expressing it as congratulations. Congrats to Tessa and the family on the new home. So exciting for everyone. My cheeks burned when I read it. And the family. As though the purchase had been a collective effort, a family achievement that everyone could wear. As though I had not worked 2 jobs for 14 months. As though I had not looked at my spreadsheet every Sunday evening, tracking what I had saved and what I still needed, and how much longer the timeline would be. And the family. I screenshot the message with its timestamp before anyone could delete it. Then the other messages arrived. More relatives adding hearts. A cousin posting a gif of a house with sparkles. Someone asking what part of town. No one in the group chat had a different version of events yet. They had received my family's version, had been told a story that included them before I had even unpacked the kitchen. Then my phone buzzed with a private message. My Aunt Wren. "Your mom says you promised Ty a room," she wrote. "Is everything okay?" I read it twice. I had said nothing of the kind. Ty arrived at noon on a Saturday. He had a duffel bag over his shoulder. The medium-sized one I recognized from family vacations when we were teenagers. It was full enough that the zipper was straining at one end, he said, just for a few weeks. He said it with the ease of someone who had already decided the answer was yes and was providing context rather than making a request. He stepped forward, the automatic step of someone who expected a door to open when they moved toward it. I was in the doorway. I did not move. He looked at me. I looked at him. "No," I said. Ty's step stopped. His face moved through several adjustments in the specific way it moved when it encountered something that was not cooperating. The surprise, then the recalibration, then the decision about which approach to use next. He chose the low voice, the voice he used when he wanted to communicate seriousness without volume, the voice he had developed over years because volume had stopped working on me when I was 26. "Then, I'll tell everyone you stole this house from Mom and Dad," he said. I looked at him. I thought about the deed on the kitchen counter. Mom called that evening. She and Dad were both on the call. The specific double handset quality of parents who had decided a conversation required both of their presences. They said I was forgetting where I came from. They used that phrase. Forgetting where you came from. The phrase deployed when someone has moved in a direction the family finds threatening and needs to be reminded that movement requires permission. Mom said she had helped me. Said we helped you. Said it with the certainty of someone who believed it. I asked the question I had been wanting to ask for years in different contexts. "How exactly did you help?" I said. Silence. The specific silence of people searching for content to put inside a claim they had been making on feeling rather than fact. Dad found something. He said I would not have been approved without them. He said it vaguely, without describing what they had done specifically. Without naming a document or an amount or a date. Without them, he said. I thought about the loan approval letter sitting in my folder. I thought about my debt-to-income ratio, my credit score I had built from a 619 to a 748 over 4 years. The pre-approval that had arrived on a Thursday morning while I was eating breakfast alone. The memory arrived fully on Sunday. I was sitting at my kitchen table, my table in my kitchen, with the loan file open in front of me. 14 months. That was the timeline of the second job. The customer service work I had taken on Tuesday and Thursday evenings and every other weekend. The shifts that paid for the additional savings that pushed my down payment from barely adequate to strong. My parents hadn't known about the second job because I hadn't told them. Not because I was hiding something. Because when I mentioned financial goals in their presence, the conversation shifted to Ty's needs. Every time. With such consistency that I had stopped sharing my goals with them the way you stopped watering a plant that took the water and gave nothing back. They had not attended the closing. They had not been invited because their names were not on any document, and their presence would not have changed anything that happened in that room. The closing disclosure was in the folder. My name, singular, on every line where a name appeared. My realtor called while I was reading it. She said something that made me set the folder down. Someone contacted the title office today, she said. A family member, asking about how to add names to a property after closing. The title officer called me the next morning. She was professional, calm. The kind of person who had seen family situations complicate property matters and had developed a protocol for it. She confirmed that a call had come in. A person identifying themselves as my family member had asked, specifically, about the process for adding additional names to a property title after the closing date. The officer had asked whether the property owner had authorized the inquiry. The family member had said it was a family matter, and the owner would agree once the process was explained. The officer had declined to provide information without documented owner authorization. She was calling me as standard practice when inquiries were made without clear authorization. I thanked her. I asked what I could do to protect the title from unauthorized changes. She explained the process. An owner-initiated alert requiring my notarized signature on any title modification. A flag on the property that would notify me of any inquiry. I said yes to both immediately. After the call, I sat at the table for a moment. Then my phone buzzed. Ty had texted. A photo. A blank quitclaim deed form. The kind used to transfer property interest from one party to another. Underneath it, one line. Found this online? Pretty simple process. I looked at the quitclaim deed photo for a long time. Not because I was considering it, because I needed to understand exactly what I was looking at. A quitclaim deed transferred property rights. Signing one would add Ty's name, or my parents' names, to the title of a house they had contributed nothing to purchasing. It would transform my sole ownership into something shared, not because of any legal standing they had, not because of any documented contribution, because I signed a piece of paper while they pressured me. My hands went cold, then very steady. I opened my text chain with Ty. I typed one response: "Do not contact me about property transfers." I sent it and immediately screenshot the exchange, both the photo he had sent and my response. Time-stamped, saved to the documentation folder I had started the same day the new locks went in. Then I called the title office back and told them about the quitclaim deed photo. The officer added a note to my file. An hour later, Mom called. Her voice was the one that arrived when she thought volume would accomplish what other approaches had not. She said, "Why are you treating us like strangers?" I looked at the screenshot of the quitclaim deed on my screen. The family meeting was communicated as an invitation. A text from Mom. "Sunday at 4. Come to the house. We need to talk like a family." I read the message. Then I thought about every family meeting I had attended in the past, the specific configuration of those rooms. Me in the center, everyone else arranged around me with the atmosphere of a hearing rather than a conversation. Questions asked in the tone of verdicts, silences that were held as weapons. I typed my response. I said I wasn't able to come, that I was happy to communicate by email if there were specific things that needed to be addressed in writing. Email. Documented. Dated. No way to later claim something was said that wasn't. I sent it. The response from Dad arrived quickly. "Then we'll come to you." I put my phone down. I went to my laptop, ordered the doorbell camera that had been in my browsing history for 2 days, paid for the expedited shipping. Then I sat at my kitchen table and opened the documentation folder. I started adding context notes to each saved item, the date, the specific circumstances, the exact words I could remember. The way a researcher documented a timeline rather than the way an injured person vented into a journal. Structure over emotion. They came on a Tuesday evening, not Sunday. Tuesday. The specific randomness of showing up at a time that hadn't been stated, which was designed to catch me unprepared, to find me in the middle of something, to make the encounter feel ambushing because that was what it was. Mom knocked. Hard. The knock that carried a message in its force. I went to the door. Did not open it immediately. Looked through the side window first. Mom, Dad, and behind them slightly to the side, Ty. I opened the door. Mom was already crying, not quietly. The specific volume of tears that expected an audience and was performing for the neighbors it could see over my shoulder. 2 houses down, someone's front light came on. I said with the voice I had been practicing, "Please leave." Mom said she just wanted to talk. Said family didn't shut each other out. Said these things while the tears produced the effect she needed them to produce. I kept my hand on the door frame. "Please leave," I said again. Same words, same volume. Then I saw Ty's phone. He had it raised, camera facing me, recording. I understood immediately what the recording was for. He needed footage of me doing something he could use. A raised voice, a slammed door. A moment of visible emotion that could be extracted from its context and presented as evidence of instability or aggression. I gave him none of those things. I looked directly at the camera. Then I said, in the clearest voice I had used since the whole sequence began, "You are trespassing on my property. I am asking you to leave." Ty kept the camera up. I said, "This is being recorded by my own system. Everything that is happening right now is documented." That was partially true, and partially in anticipation. The doorbell camera was arriving the next morning, but the statement was accurate enough and its effect was immediate. Ty's camera arm lowered slightly. Mom's crying shifted register, the public version becoming something smaller and more manageable. Dad looked at the door frame, then at the street, the look of someone calculating whether this was the right audience for the scene they had planned. Ty smirked. "Call the cops then," he said. "Let's see who they believe." I looked at him. "Leave my property," I said. The third time. They left. The doorbell camera arrived the next morning. I installed it myself. It wasn't complicated. The instructions were clear and I had read them the previous evening while I waited for the package to arrive. I tested it from the street. The angle was correct. The motion sensitivity was set. The footage went to cloud storage and stayed there for 30 days by default. I changed the setting to 90. Then I added the other pieces. The documentation folder already had texts, voicemails, the quitclaim deed photo, the title office call summary, the group chat screenshots, the aunt's message about the room Ty never had. I added the notes from the Tuesday evening visit, the time they arrived, the specific things said, my response, Ty's camera, the words I had used, the order they left in. Fear had been the thing I'd been feeling since the first knock on moving day. Doing the work of documenting replaced fear with something more useful. Structure. Then an email arrived from my lender. Subject, inquiry regarding your loan. They had received a contact. A person had called asking about my mortgage payoff structure and the source of the funds used for my down payment. I sat with the email. Then I forwarded it to the documentation folder with a note. Mom let it slip on a Wednesday phone call. She didn't intend to. She was making a different point. She was talking about family responsibility and the way people who had more than they needed should think about the people around them. Then she said it. "He just needs somewhere safe," she said. "He's in a difficult situation." And then, 2 sentences later before the topic changed, "He needs an asset, something stable he can point to." An asset, not a room, not a temporary place to stay. An asset, the specific financial language of someone explaining why a property would be useful as a resource in a situation that had nothing to do with where someone slept. Ty was in debt, serious debt, based on the pieces Mom had revealed without meaning to, and the pattern of his requests over the past year. He needed something attached to his name that looked like financial standing. He needed my house, not to live in, not out of genuine need, to use. I thought about the quitclaim deed photo, about the title office inquiry, about the loan inquiry from my lender. Each piece connecting to the others in a way that formed a picture I hadn't seen fully until this moment. Mom said, "If you loved your brother, you'd help." Dad called on Friday. He had the voice he used for conversations he considered important, measured, deliberate. The voice of a man who believed that when he spoke slowly, people received it as wisdom rather than pressure. He listed things, the sacrifices, the years, the specific incidents that got named whenever the family needed me to feel like I owed something. The money when I was 19 and briefly struggling. The phone call he made to someone once, some connection I couldn't fully verify, something that he believed had mattered. Mom's crying in the background, Ty's silence, the old script. I knew every line of it. I waited until Dad finished. Then I said something I had been practicing. Not a speech, not a list of rebuttals, one sentence. "I can love you and still say no." The line was quiet. Ty's voice, which had been absent, appeared, low and precise, the voice he used when he had made a decision. "Then I'll make it legal," he said. I thought about the quitclaim deed photo. I thought about the title office flag. I thought about the documentation folder with its growing, time-stamped record. I said, "Okay," and ended the call. The title office called on a Monday morning. The officer's voice had the careful quality of someone delivering information that required the recipient to stay calm. She said a filing had come in, an affidavit, submitted by my brother, claiming that he had contributed funds to the purchase of my property and was therefore entitled to a property interest. She said her office was required to flag it and contact me as the sole recorded owner. She said the affidavit was vague and unspecified. It named amounts without documentation. It described contributions without receipts. It was the kind of filing that someone made when they wanted to create a record without having evidence to support the record. She asked if I had documentation showing the source of my purchase funds. I said yes, I had everything. She said, if this escalates, it could become a formal title dispute. She said it the way people said things they wanted you to understand were serious. I asked what I needed to provide. She listed the documents. I went to my folder. The closing disclosure, the wire transfer confirmation from my bank to the escrow company, the bank statements showing the accumulation of my down payment, the earnest money check with its deposit record. All of it mine. I spent 2 evenings building the documentation package, not rushing, not from panic, with the specific focus of someone who understood that the strength of a case was in its completeness and its clarity. Wire confirmations, my bank, the escrow account, the date, the exact amount, every number matching the closing disclosure on the corresponding line, bank statements running 14 months, the savings progression, the months with higher deposits from the second job overlaid against the base salary months, the specific proof that the money had built incrementally from documented sources over a documented timeline, the closing disclosure itself, every figure, my name on every ownership line, the lender's name, my agent's signature, the title company's seal, earnest money, my check, my account, my name on the notation. Not a single document that had another name on a line where mine appeared. When I finished, I looked at the complete package. It was clean. It was complete. It was the kind of documentation that existed when someone had done something honestly over time rather than quickly and under pressure. The title officer called while I was reviewing the final page. She said, "We've looked at your brother's affidavit more carefully." She paused. "Your parents' names are not anywhere in your transaction record, and yet your brother claims they contributed." The voicemail from Mom arrived on a Thursday at 9:41 in the morning. She had called while I was in a meeting. I listened to it afterward, alone in my car in the parking structure. She had called to express frustration, had said things about the situation and about my choices and about Ty's situation and about the family. Then she had said the things she hadn't intended to say, not loudly, in the middle of a longer sentence, with the carelessness of someone who had forgotten they were leaving a record. "We thought you'd share once it was done," she said. "We just thought once it was bought and settled, you'd understand that this was how it worked." We thought. Not we asked, not we discussed. We thought. They had planned around an assumption they had never confirmed with me, had expected me to behave in a way they had decided was inevitable, had been operating since before the closing on the belief that my house would function as a shared resource because they had decided it would. I listened to the voicemail twice, then I saved it, immediately, to the folder and to the cloud backup, added a note with the timestamp and the specific phrase. Then a cousin called. "Why is your family saying you forged documents?" she said. The smear was running. I could trace its shape from the messages arriving in ones and twos from relatives who had been given a version of events that required me to be dishonest in order for Ty's claim to make sense. A cousin asked about the forgery accusation. Another asked if I had used family money improperly. An aunt sent a careful message saying she had heard things that concerned her and hoped I would call to explain. Each message had the same shape, the same framing, the same source. My family was telling people I had committed fraud, not in legal filings, in conversations, in the informal court of family opinion where evidence was not required and reputation was the thing at stake. My stomach nodded. Then I made a decision. I was not going to defend myself in that court, not publicly, not in the group chat, not in responses to relatives who had received a version of events from people with a stake in that version being believed. I was going to keep everything for professionals. I screenshot every message I received, added each one to the folder. Then a physical letter arrived, formal envelope, legal letterhead, notice of intent to file civil claim, citing alleged misrepresentation in property acquisition. Ty had found an attorney willing to file on his account. My attorney's name was Iris Donovan. She had an office on the 4th floor of a building downtown, and the specific manner of someone who had spent years listening to people describe family situations and had long since stopped being surprised by what families were capable of. She read the notice of intent. She reviewed the documentation package I had brought. She asked questions in the flat tone of someone collecting information rather than responding to it. When she finished, she looked up. "You're not the problem," she said. "Their entitlement is." She said it simply, not as comfort, as assessment. She outlined what she was going to do, a cease and desist, sent to Ty, to my parents, and to Ty's attorney, formally, citing the documented evidence of the false affidavit filed with the title office and requesting proof of the claimed contribution with supporting financial documentation. She said, if he contributed, he has bank records showing the transfer. Wire confirmations. Something. We're asking him to produce it. She sent the letter that afternoon. Ty's response arrived 2 days later. Not through his attorney. Through a voicemail. Long, angry, describing me in terms that required saving and adding to the folder, which I did. Anger was not documentation. My attorney said, he's angry because there's nothing to produce. The family call came on a Saturday morning. All three of them, somehow, on the same call with me at once. I didn't understand how they had managed it until I realized Dad had called and Mom and Ty had been in the room with him. They said I was cold. Each of them. In sequence and then overlapping. Mom said cold. Dad said difficult. Ty said evil. The 3 words landed. I noticed them arrive and I let them sit without responding to them because responding to what people called me was not the same as addressing what had actually happened. They said I should withdraw the cease and desist. They said I was escalating something that didn't need to be escalated. They said I was being aggressive. I thought about the affidavit Ty had filed with the title office, about the civil claim notice, about the quitclaim deed photo, about my parents' names being added to conversations with my lender without my knowledge or consent. I said, this is my home, this is my boundary. I said both sentences clearly. Then I ended the call. I texted Iris Donovan. She replied within the hour. Ty's attorney just submitted what they're calling evidence, she wrote. It came in this afternoon. You need to come in and see it. Iris set the document on the desk between us. She didn't say anything for a moment. Let me read it first. Ty's submission was a screenshot. A screenshot of a text exchange that he was claiming showed my parents discussing a financial contribution to my house purchase. I read it carefully. Then I read it again. The font was slightly wrong. Not obviously, but noticeably, if you were looking at it in the way Iris was training me to look at it. The timestamp format was different from how our family's phones had displayed timestamps in any screenshot I had seen across dozens of saved messages. The names in the thread were there, but the specific formatting of the header, the carrier signal display, the battery indicator position was inconsistent with the phone model he had claimed. Iris said, our tech consultant flagged it in 40 minutes. She said the title office had also flagged it when Iris sent it for comparison against the original affidavit. She said, the metadata on that image shows it was created last Thursday at 11:14 in the evening. After the cease and desist had arrived, he had made it after being asked to produce proof. Iris set her pen down. This could carry significant consequences for him, she said. The mediation session was in a neutral conference room. The mediator was a retired judge with the specific stillness of someone who had heard every variety of human conflict and had developed opinions about all of them. Iris had the documents laid out in the order she intended to present them. The deed, the closing disclosure, the wire confirmation from my bank, the bank statements, the earnest money documentation. Each one labeled, each one clean. My parents sat across the table, Ty beside them, his attorney at the far end. The mediator read through the documents in sequence. He read them the way official documents were read in formal settings, with the specific attention of someone who understood that what was in front of him was a record rather than a story. Iris presented the flagged screenshot, the metadata showing the creation date, The technical analysis from the consultant, the comparison against authentic screenshots from the same time period. Ty's attorney said very little. Ty said nothing. My parents sat very still. The mediator set the last document down. He looked at the table. The property record is unambiguous, he said. This is not family property. He looked at Ty. This is solely Tessa Callahan's. Ty's jaw tightened. His attorney touched his arm. The room understood that paper doesn't bully back. Ty's claim was dismissed. The title office formally closed the inquiry and removed the affidavit from my property record. The mediator's determination was documented and attached to the title history as an official resolution. Ty received a formal warning from the title office regarding the false filing. His attorney provided no further correspondence. My parents' narrative, the family property story, the shared investment story, the we helped you story, collapsed the way stories collapsed when they were read against documents that said something different. I changed my number on a Tuesday, not dramatically, as the next practical step. The same way I had changed the locks and installed the camera and built the documentation folder. Each step in the sequence of a person protecting something that was theirs. I kept the camera, tested it monthly. The footage sat in cloud storage 90 days at a time. I hosted a housewarming in October. Small. 8 people. The ones who had been present through the actual building of my life, rather than the performance of it. Friends who knew about the second job. My colleague who had proofread my budget spreadsheet once when I was second-guessing my numbers. Grandma June, who arrived with a plant and stayed the longest. They clapped when I gave a small toast. Not because they wanted something, because they were proud. He called it family property, so I let the deed remind everyone what it really was. Mine.